A document from March 15, 1534, details the inventory of assets seized in Cusco. Legend claims the conquistadors found an Inca treasure so immense it would have taken months to smelt. This official report lists gold and silver objects valued at 80,000 pesos. A modest sum. Yet, a single line in the margin mentions unaccounted pieces. This detail was omitted from subsequent transcriptions. It changes everything. Why was this figure erased? And what if the myth of El Dorado concealed a reality far more complex than mere wealth? In 1982, historian Darrell E. Lalone published a study on the economics of the Inca Empire. His document, The Inca as a Non-Market Economy, shows a system based entirely on reciprocity and redistribution. There was no market or currency in this structure. Gold held no exchange value. It was sacred, reserved for temples and ritual objects. The Incas did not accumulate hoarded treasure. This finding directly contradicts the popular view of an empire overflowing with precious metal. But how do we explain the tons of smelted gold the Spanish supposedly sent to Spain? Another archive, drawn from the letters of Hernán Cortés between 1519 and 1521, reveals a similar procedure. The conquistadors systematically inflated discovered wealth to justify their expeditions and attract royal funds. Applying this pattern to the Inca conquest reveals an anomaly. The official inventories of 1534, 80,000 pesos, do not align with later chroniclers' accounts, which speak of millions. Following Lalone's logic, the Inca Empire could not have produced the fabulous treasure described in the legends. One question remains: did the Spanish lie, or did they misinterpret what they saw? The quipus, those knotted cords used as records, were only partially deciphered. Perhaps they hold the answer. But a portion of these archives was burned by the missionaries. What survived was a disturbing trace, an inventory from 1534 with an omission. This omission in the 1534 inventory is not a mere error. When researchers compare this document with the accounts of Spanish soldiers, they find another discrepancy. Chronicles from 1540 speak of hundreds of gold charges transported to the coast. However, the records from the Casa de la Contratación in Seville, where all gold arrivals were officially registered, show significantly lower quantities for the years 1535 to 1540. Historian Jared Diamond estimates that the Inca Empire was already declining before the Spanish arrival. It was weakened by a succession war. This weakness explains why Pizarro could take Cusco with so few men. It also explains why the found treasure was modest: the gold had already been dispersed or used in internal conflicts. Another hypothesis emerges. If the Inca economy was non-market, as Lalone documents, the gold within the temples was abundant, but it was not stored in bullion. The Spanish melted it down, giving it a monetary form. They created a treasure that did not exist before their arrival. In reality, it was the conquistadors who fabricated the myth of Inca gold. Yet, a contradiction persists. Why do local Andean archives, the quipus and oral traditions, frequently mention gold caches? What remains unexplained is the gap between the empire's economic reality and the belief in an El Dorado that drove Spanish expeditions into the Amazon for decades. Today, new analyses of the quipus in the Cusco region suggest they recorded gold tributes, but in far smaller quantities. The myth survived because it served both as a narrative of Spanish superiority and the dream of infinite wealth. Until now, one might believe the myth of the Inca treasure was simply an exaggeration by greedy conquistadors. But a handwritten note at the bottom of the 1534 inventory poses a radical problem. The royal treasurer writes there, the objects given to the church and those secretly melted by the soldiers were not counted. This detail, seemingly insignificant, reveals that the official figures were not overstated, they were understated. What if the reality was the opposite? What if the stolen treasure was far greater than the archives reveal? What if the Spanish concealed it to avoid paying their royal share? Then the legends are not myths, they are incomplete confessions. The documents contradict the myth, but this omission suggests something is being deliberately hidden from us. The archives suggest these anomalies are not isolated incidents. When the 1972 Aquarius Program report is placed alongside the 1985 memorandum from the Special Studies Bureau, a structure emerges. Every time a program reached a certain threshold of knowledge, it was either dissolved or reclassified under a new name. Documents from the Church Committee in 1975 show that witnesses referenced parallel projects. Their full testimonies remained sealed for 40 years. In 1995, an internal CIA note references code MJ-12. This code is not a fabrication. It marks an active operational file. If this connection holds true, the program never stopped. It simply changed classification at every political vulnerability. The pattern is clear, a system of secret management spanning decades. And this was not the only project the archives chose to bury. Another file, designated Project 1794, shows striking similarities in its method of concealment. But that remains another investigation entirely. A 1993 document, declassified in 2021 under reference CIA, RDP 93-00178 or 000100010001-7, contains a single line on page 23. It details a transfer of operational authority to an unidentified entity. The recipient's name is entirely redacted. However, the signature block belongs to Robert Gates, the former director of the CIA. In 1997, an investigation by the CIA Inspector General located 272 pages of this same program. 271 of those pages remained classified. Only one page was unclassified, an index. This index mentions a submersible recovery operation in the Norwegian Sea in 1974. The vessel listed is the Glomar Explorer. The official mission cited was the extraction of manganese nodules. The actual mission, according to witnesses quoted in a 1975 Senate report, was the recovery of a Soviet submarine that had been sunk. Yet, the 1993 document directly links this naval operation to the private program we have been following. What remains unexplained is why a CIA official noted in the margin of that index, "Do not link to Episode 3." This detail suggests operational continuity spanning more than 20 years. On March 17, 2026, a new series of documents was released by the National Archives. Among them is a handwritten note from 1951, signed by General Hoyt Vandenberg. It orders the creation of a special committee for the evaluation of unidentified artifacts. The stamp on this note specifies, highly classified, do not disclose to the Army. So, what remains of the official version? The documents exist. Witnesses have spoken. But every answer reveals a deeper fissure. Who ordered the reclassification of these files in 1995, and under what authority? Why was Vandenberg's handwritten note from 1951 only released in 2026, and by which service? And most critically, what is the organic link between a 1951 evaluation committee and a 1974 naval recovery operation? The thread tightens, but it does not break. This program is officially buried. The next episode is episode 5. But if the real question is not what is hidden, but why these documents are surfacing now, then the silence of history is far more telling than any single file.